All right, sup, Luke. Welcome to the first week of our little back and forth video letters to each other. I know I said you could do something else for this week, but I decided to blindside you and go with something that's been on my mind for a while. And that is why I think Kenjaku doesn't work in Jujutsu Kaisen, a three-part analysis and comparison. That's right, you're getting a TED Talk at me right now. So let's start off with reason number one, and that is the missed opportunities with Kenjaku. Right here on the screen, I've outlined the six characters that he interacts with the most on the protagonist side. And start off with the good characters, or the good interaction I think he has. Start off with Choso. Obviously, it makes sense to interact. Choso is his child since, Kenjaku created the Death Moon paintings. So naturally, they'd come into conflict. Similarly, with Yuki, their conflict was foreshadowed at the very beginning, or at the end of the Shibuya incident, with them kind of having their disagreements over the nature of cursed energy and how it should be expanded. So naturally, they would come into conflict there. And then obviously we've got Gojo. Kenjaku's in Geto's body. Obviously, Gojo's not going to be a happy camper about that. And then we get into the more meh or bad interactions I have. Starting with Takaba. Uh, they don't really have that like interesting of a dynamic. It's a fun dynamic, admittedly, with the very serious villain paired with the comedic gag character, but it's not really the kind of thing that you really want to have at the very end of the series. You want to have I was at least personally looking for Kenjaku interacting more with the main characters we had been with for a long time and who had more interesting philosophical or more personal rivalries with Kenjaku as opposed to Takaba, who was a side character who really hadn't done much of anything until he actually fought Kenjaku. And while that fight is admittedly very, very fun to read, I don't think it was really worthy of being Kenjaku's send-off fight. And then finally, we've got Yuta. This one is definitely better than uh, Takaba, but I'm still not the biggest fan of it. It was probably foreshadowed in the Shibuya incident with Kenjaku disregarding Yuta's abilities as a special grade. So it is poetic that Yuta is the one that kills him. And Yuta had promised to himself that he would kill Kenjaku to save Gojo the pain of having to kill Geto twice. And of course, Yuta is the one who beat Geto originally. But it's really not that interesting of a motivation for Yuta in terms of like how like dynamically. He doesn't really care who Kenjaku is. He only cares that he's the guy inside of Geto's body. It's not really a like deep personal motivation for it. It's more like Kenjaku could be anyone. You could have any personality. All that matters is that he's the one in Geto's body, and he's the one who is going to cause his sensei more pain. So I don't think it's really. It's like narratively satisfying, but doesn't feel like personally satisfying that Yuta is the one to kill Kenjaku. And obviously we've got the ugly here, which is Yuji. Yuji is the main protagonist of the series, and Kenjaku is one of the two main antagonists. The fact that they don't interact outside of the very end of Shibuya before Yuji even knows that Kenjaku is his parent is a massive missed opportunity, both for development on Yuji's part and for more expanding on Kenjaku as a villain. And presumably the fact that Yuji learned that Kenjaku was the parent off screen when from Gojo, just a massive missed opportunity, really undermines Kenjaku's credibility as a villain, in my opinion. Moving on to number two here, we've got the unsatisfying death, which I kind of talked about earlier. You can see here we got this panel on the left from Kenjaku's fight with Choso, where when Choso asks Kenjaku why he's doing what he's doing, Kenjaku responds, "It just sounds fun." Now, this could just be him messing with Choso, but I think there is at least some sort of truth in the statement about him just kind of doing it because he thinks it'd be fun to start the merger. And then right here we have at the very have at the end of the fight with Takaba after Yuta's decapitated him, he says it's a shame to bow out, but he's fine with it as long as his will is passed on. These two panels seem kind of in conflict with each other. Kenjaku never really struck me as somebody who does what he does for the greater good. I don't think Kenjaku thinks that he's in the moral right. I think he's doing it kind of because he thinks it'd be fun, as it says on the left here. He's doing it because he wants to. So for him to be okay with not seeing the merger through fully and not seeing what the next advancement of curse energy that he wants come to fruition, I think it feels very out of character, and it feels like it kind of undermines Kenjaku as a villain in terms of his credibility to me. It kind of just ruins him a bit. It's not the worst thing in the world, obviously. It's not Naruto War Arc, but it's not great. And then reason number three, and this is the biggest reason why I really don't like Kenjaku, that's that I don't think his dynamic with Sukuna is actually that interesting. I think they're just too similar as characters. They're both super hedonistic. They're both very cruel. They're never shown to have any major disagreements. And while they don't actually interact on screen that much, that kind of goes back to point number one about having these massive missed opportunities where you don't really know what their relationship is like until towards the very end after Sukuna has already switched bodies and they're kind of just chilling. That's not really like any sort of interesting conflict between them. And I think that's just a missed opportunity when you're having these two big antagonists. You want to have like something differentiating them, some sort of disagreement. But the fact that they're just on the same page is kind of boring. And there's only real like difference you can point to that Kenjaku is more of a planner, while Suguna kind of seems to go with the flow. But even then, Suguna himself has been shown to be a planner in terms of his long-term plan to switch over from Yuji's body to Megami's and in his plan to counter Infinity in his fight with Gojo. So it really just doesn't feel like they become more than the sum of their parts when you put them together in the series. And then in terms of some better intervillain dynamics, I've got three different examples of types of intervillain dynamics here. Kind of on the left from My Hero Academia, we've got Shigaraki and Overhaul, and this is what I'd refer to as a kind of stepping stone villain, where Overhaul is an antagonist in one arc, and he serves to help evolve Shigaraki as a character throughout the course of the arc. Second, in the middle here, we've got the underlings intervillain dynamic with Meruem and the Chimera Ants, the Chimera Ant Royal Guard, Poof, Yuppie, and Pito all evolve as the arc progresses, and it puts them into conflict with each other and with Meruem, especially with Poof and Meruem at the very end of the Chimera Ant arc. That is some very gripping scenes and episodes and chapters towards the end after Meruem's fight with Netero. And I think that they're just like some of the best villains you're ever going to see in Shonen. And I think that for somebody like Gege who clearly takes some inspiration from Hunter x Hunter, yeah, I don't know, it feels like even unfair to compare them really. It feels like he could have done a lot better there with making a very sort of interesting conflict between Sukuna and Kenjaku. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, Meruem is the one example of a primary antagonist who does interact with the protagonist in his arc, that being Gon, and it actually is still a good dynamic because they have their two contrasting arcs where they start and end in opposite places of each other. And then finally, we've got the rival villain dynamic, which is represented here by Blackbeard and Akainu from One Piece. But this is very just broadly about the dynamic between the antagonistic pirates and the Marines throughout One Piece. You got the various admirals, vice admirals, and you've got all the pirates that One Piece here, your Blackbeard, your Kaidos, your Big Moms, your Doflamingos, and they have very interesting conflicts when they put against one another, especially when you throw the Straw Hats in there. Like in Alabasta, you've got Crocodile and Smoker and the Straw Hats, and that's a lot of fun. And you have the same dynamic again in Punk Hazard with Smoker, Caesar, and the Straw Hats. I feel like that's probably the closest to what I kind of maybe wanted out of Kenjaku and Sukuna is that they are two they have two different goals, and you can see, and you would have Kenjaku, Sukuna, and Yuji and Bros all kind of in direct conflict with one another, and you could see that blossom out in just a whole bunch of different ways, but we never got that, unfortunately. So, yeah, in conclusion, Kenjaku is mid. And in 2024, that's just about the worst thing you could say about a piece of media, unfortunately. So that is it. And I'll see your response on Friday, hopefully.